is the College Game Day podcast for Friday, August the 30th, the Picks edition. I'm Ryan McGee. I'm coming to you. If you ever listen to Marty McGee, watch Marty McGee, you know sometimes I do the show from my truck because I'm at the beach and I don't want to bother my family. That's where I am today. Before I jump in on an airplane and head down to Gainesville, Florida, and I am joined on this Picks edition by Stanford Steve. Son, how you doing?
Excellent, bud. Good to see you out and about, ready to go. It's that time of year. Nothing better.
Listen, as a loyal listener of the College Game Day podcast, I don't think I've ever been on the Pick show, but I've listened to all of them. And what a phenomenon last year where I feel like your picks, Steve, on a Friday were a hell of a lot better than they were on a Saturday. Maybe it's just me. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it felt that way.
We bought him a ribeye.
You know, you got to own them wherever you are. You can't, you know, bounce around. Hey, I did good on this one and I was bad on this one. Yeah. Obviously,
it's like having 3 NCAA tournament brackets.
Yeah, exactly. So,
yeah. All right. So let's hunker down on some picks.
Yeah, let's go.
And we're going to start with this is a game that where I grew up in the Carolinas in the 70s, 80s, even the early 90s. Clemson, Georgia was played every year, and they've only played, I think, maybe a half a dozen times this century. I was at the last game where they played, and I still have not recovered from the ugliness of that Saturday night game that was in Charlotte, just down the road from my house. This year will be in Georgia's backyard, although a building where they have a lot of bad memories, which is the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. It'll be noon on ABC. The latest line I have is that Georgia is favored by 13.5 points. Steve, we'll start with you. What do you think about these schools that are only 72 miles apart?
Yeah, I thinking about that game last time, Ryan. I just think about the NFL talent that was on the defensive line on both teams. Like it was deep, and it showed. DJ struggled. The quarterback play from Georgia struggled, and I believe it was only one defensive touchdown, a pick six. That was the difference. So I expect more offense in this game. Really interested to see what Cade Klubnik does this year. Georgia feels like they're, again, just I don't want to say cheated, but can't get the running back position right with the depth concerns. You go back to last year with Dylan Bell, who was unbelievable. You see an old 86 lined up at tailback. That's not what you think of when Georgia
that warms your tight end heart, doesn't it, Steve?
No, not when he's as fast as that. You can do whatever you want when you're as skilled as that. You could have whatever number. But I really feel like Georgia's going to come out with an emphasis. We know how good Carson Beck was last year throwing the football. I do feel like it's too many points. I'm going to take Clemson in a big. We're going to talk about some other teams that really, really need a good start to the season, knowing what happened last year. I believe Georgia wins. I'll take Clemson plus the points.
I'm gonna follow Steve there. Similar rationale. I love the under in this game. Like just looking at it first glance, that's just like I'm most curious to see Clemson's receivers in this game, right? They had some guys coming off injury. They have some young talent. They have the best room they've had there in 3-4 years. So if Clemson's receiver play is functional, it opens things up. It has been, let's just say, a middling ACC receiver room for a handful of seasons after being the best receiver room in college football pre-2020 when Bama kind of took that, wrestled that title of maybe 2019. So I think that Clemson's front seven will be able to neutralize Georgia. If they're going to cover, Kirby's going to have to come out super aggressive and chuck it around. And that's just not in Georgia's DNA. Now, maybe watching Mike Norvell get too conservative and have it upend him, it factors into how Kirby and Bobo sort of settle on a game plan here. But I think this is going to be a low-scoring game. I think Clemson hangs around, but I think Georgia ends up winning.
And these could be two teams, certainly in Georgia's case, but Clemson too could be two teams we'll see in this expanded college football playoff at the end of the year. And for Clemson, they just need some sort of statement because right now they are lost in the woods. And Pete and I talked about this, Steve, when we did the pod a couple weeks ago. Georgia's schedule, dude, is awful. It's awful. And it's not just about the ranked teams. It's about going to Kentucky, and it's about when they have to play Auburn, and it's sandwiched in between other games. So it's not a must-win for Georgia, but it's time for them to make a statement. So I think they'll do it. That spread seems like an awful lot, but those are the kind of games that Georgia likes to dominate. All right, I mentioned where you guys are going. We're going to go right there right now. 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Texas A&M right now favored by 3 points at home. Pete, what you think? Well, assuming you're going to have your cool suit on when I see you on the show Saturday morning.
Yeah, I'm Albanian, so I already roll in with a layer of fur underneath my clothing. So I'm operating at a disadvantage from the start. So I love the under in this game too. In fact, I love it more than the last one. I do not think this is going to be a high scoring game at all. This has all the trappings of 13-10, 14-10, whatever it is. I like A&M. I don't like getting cute on small lines and saying this team's going to win and that team's going to cover. So I like A&M to win. I think they will cover. I think it's going to be a close game. I think it's two tremendous defensive fronts, two tremendous front sevens, and two quarterbacks who are going to struggle beating you with their arm because the receiver talent is pedestrian in this game. Now, so look, you can play this transfer from FIU and this. Nah, I want to see it before I think that guy's going to go streak down the field 80 yards and catch a ball from Riley Leonard in front of 90,000 people. Until proven otherwise, those are mediocre receiver rooms, and that's going to make both of these teams struggle to score because each of them have elite D lines. I know I'm not America's foremost expert on calling out elite D lines right now, so I should probably own that. But I think A&M rides their front four and in the home crowd and wins.
Yeah, I've been going back and forth on this one. To all Pete's points, I love the idea of this the newness of Notre Dame. You talk about Riley Leonard, you talk about Denbrock coming back. He was the OC for the Heisman Trophy winner last year. And on the other side, you have Riley Leonard's, old head coach, calling defenses and being in the mix on defenses against him. Colin Klein coming in, who, no one knows what he's going to do. I would imagine what all great offense coordinators do. You play to your strengths, right? And as Pete pointed out, the offense aren't the strengths on these two teams. I do like Notre Dame's personnel defensively better. That's what makes me lean Notre Dame in this game. But to see Notre Dame not be able to rely on an offensive line yet, in what they've had in years past is going to be pretty surprising, and it's going to be eye opening for those guys. That atmosphere, a night game there, as loud as it could be. And talk about a team in A&M where I believe Pete second in transfers lost. I know they've brought in a ton, but right up, Alabama, A&M up there. Obviously, Colorado's in their own tier when it comes to that stuff. But I believe Notre Dame will rely on that defense. I love the secondary, love the front. So I'm going to take Notre Dame in a close one. I could even see A&M winning and Notre Dame covering that 3. So I'll take Notre Dame plus the 3.
Well, and I joke about the heat, but it's going to be a factor. But it's interesting because everyone in the Midwest is complaining about this heat wave, and it's been 99 degrees this week in South Bend, and the coaching staff at Notre Dame is like, awesome. Y'all can complain all you want. This is exactly what we needed. And Correct. So, but this story, and I know you guys feel the same way about Riley Leonard that I do. And Elko too. What they did at Duke was phenomenal.
Unreal.
I grew up around the corner. To anyone that can win there, they're miracle workers. And to do it at the level they did it, and now to watch them reunited in this game, that's just, you can't make that up. And so I'm excited to see. But yeah, I think. Listen, Texas A&M fans don't like me because I'm constantly reminding everyone they don't have a lot of trophies. They got the stadium, they've got the money, they've got the history, they've got all these things. I say it all the time. It makes everyone mad, so I'll just say it again. The last time they won a national championship, the number one movie at the box office was Gone with the Wind. It is what it is. And so until they show me they can take care of these games, then I'm going to wait and see, if they can take care of them. So I believe Notre Dame. I like them a lot. All right, the game where I'm headed will also be a little warm. Miami down at Florida. This is a game that was played forever, for decades. The Seminole War Canoe was the trophy. And then in the late 80s.
Wait, is this Reese or is this Ryan?
Yeah.
Obscure trophies are like Reese's proprietary call on them.
Well, I had to research this stuff for Marty McGee this week as we're going there. But there was, so the Seminole War Canoe which I have difficulty saying,
Mm-hmm.
and Florida has difficulty retrieving, because when they broke off the annual series in the late 80s, claiming it was because the SEC was expanding and the schedule's changing and we don't have a place for Miami every year, Miami said, well, to hell with you guys. We're locking the trophy up. And unless because they believe they were being ducked, because as you all know, we're talking about 1987, 88, 89. This is the U, and this was the beginning of it. So Miami believe they're being ducked. They're still mad. They refuse to bring the trophy, out of the trophy case. All that being said, this game has not been played in half a decade. Miami rolls in with, you talk about transfer portal. They roll in with all these new players. Meanwhile, kind of like Florida in the swamp, even though they're a 2.5-point underdog, because Florida has everyone back. Florida has so many guys back. And I understand that team was disappointing last year, but week one, boys, experience matters when everything's sloppy and everybody's starting to figure things out. So I'll take the Gators at home.
I am going to take Miami, and I'm going to take Miami on the college basketball principle, right? Mario Cristobal is entering like early 2000s Jim Boeheim, late 2000s Bill Self. He's had a lot of good teams, and sometimes the coaching has undercut the talent, right? The Georgia Tech example, we saw this at Oregon. I think at this point, if you're picking against Miami because of Mario Cristobal, you're overstating the factor of coaching, all right? Mario Cristobal is a good college football coach who has not broken through, but I feel like the talent level is at a place in Miami that it can overcome some of those shortcomings. So I feel like with Damian Martinez and Cam Ward, now Cam Ward has 43 career fumbles. If he starts coughing up in the swamp, that's nothing. Coaching's not holding it back, right? If they can design a game plan, but look, the core pick on Miami is the fronts. They have very good, elite offensive line, which is where Mario is going to build his team around ultimately, in a very good defensive line. And they have plenty of skill and all the trappings, but they are not going to go into the swamp and get pushed around. Last point on this game. If you're the ACC and you want two teams in the college football playoff, sure, it would help if Clemson beats Georgia. But if you lose to Georgia, you lose to the best team in the SEC, the SEC favorite. If you're the ACC, one of your favorites can't lose to the bottom feeder team whose coach is the face of the hot seat. That is as bad as the result was for like big picture ACC, Tech, Florida State. Now look, Tech can go on a run. We're going to give them a runway to do that. Florida State can fix themselves. This would be a very bad result for the ACC if they don't win this game.
I as soon as this line came out, I just thought about all that Florida has. I thought they've done a great job of keeping it tight to the vest. All anyone talked about with Florida in the offseason was the schedule. There has to be an onus on this game, knowing what's at stake and what it could turn into and snowball in a negative direction. So I believe Florida will be more buttoned up. Ryan, you talked about what Florida has coming back. 7 true freshmen played in every game last year. That led the country. And when I think about Miami, I do wonder about – I'm dying to see this helmet communication deal in college stadiums. In the NFL, those stadiums don't get too loud. Let's be honest. I mean, the Swamp is in an upper tier stadium, so that's going to be dealt with. And my prediction, hot take, bold prediction, whatever you want to call it, all offseason was Miami loses in the Swamp and makes the playoff. And now Pete just downshot that, making it really, really hard for me.
They can still win the ACC.
Correct. That's what I have happening. I believe, even more so with you look at your rival last week at Florida State and how, it didn't have a flow until, they were down 7 and their backs were against the wall. That's a little too late for me if that were to happen to Miami. I believe Florida will have, present their identity. They're not, Miami's great with all the young talent they return on the lines of scrimmage. We know that Mario loves building a team that way, but I believe Florida has enough. I expect Florida to win this game, so I'll take those 2.5 points, and I'll take Florida to win the game also.
You talk about the face of the hot seat, Billy Napier, who I like a lot, by the way. I remember when Billy was a quarterback at Furman and was so good. I mean, a great quarterback. And I wrote a story a year ago about, will the Florida fan base be willing to be patient enough to let him do what he needs to do, because he does have a business model? The answer is, of course, no. No one's patient, but in Gainesville in particular, they're not very patient. And
Hmm.
so it is going to be a big football game for him. All right, let's take it up to.
If someone's a former Furman quarterback, they could probably be a serial killer, and you'd like them, right, Ryan? Like that's that gives them a pretty good pass. Like that's it. Yeah, in the McGee mindset, if you're a former quarterback, you'll be okay.
Yeah, go Paladins. Bobby Lamb, new head coach of the brand new Anderson University, he's a great quarterback. I mean, I consider talking about Furman football all day, boys. We'll do that.
I know
later.
you could.
Great uniform, great helmet.
Oh, it's the best. The Diamond F. All
Yeah.
right. It's the only championship ring I have, Steve, from 1AA national. We'll talk about that later. All right. So talking about throwbacks. We had Neil Brown on Marty McGee, and he was fired up. We're fired up. Yeah, and he was very critical of a lot of things, as he will be. But it's beautiful to me that Penn State is going to West Virginia. This is at noon on Saturday. Right now, Penn State's favored by 8 on the road. But to me, Steve, this is old school Eastern football. West Virginia, by the way, also going to play Pitt in just a couple of weeks. But when I say Eastern football, you kids listening out there, I'm talking about old school. When I was a kid, the independent
pre-Big East.
Yeah, independent all the teams that Joe Paterno wanted to go form the original Big East Conference when it didn't happen. But you're talking about, Pitt and West Virginia and Penn State. And back then it was BC and it was Virginia Tech, and they all played Maryland over in the ACC. It was an amazing time for Eastern football. And so it's good to see Penn State hitting the road.
Stanford's not a natural rival for BC? No?
No.
Cal?
But
no.
By God, they are now. But I mentioned Penn State. Last line we have, they're favored by 8 on the road. That is a difficult place to go in and play, even when West Virginia is struggling. Talking about hot seat, Neil Brown's on it. He knows it. It's time for him to get on with it. And they're getting a little twitchy up there. Unfortunately for West Virginia, I just think Penn State's better. And these are the games that Penn State takes care of. We all know the games they don't take care of, but they do. I give them credit. They do take care of these games that they should take care of, particularly early in the year, Steve, before they face the annual disappointment of October and November in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I look at this for the gambling folks out there. This line in the preseason was I think as high as 11. You've seen the people be a believer in that. Awesome that this game is in Morgantown and Penn State's going there. You mentioned, hot seat with Billy Napier, with Neil Brown. I look at what James Franklin did, and I feel like that's a guy that feels like he's on the hot seat, getting 2 new coordinators in there, which I don't think is getting enough love because I absolutely love those 2 hires. You bring in Tom Allen on defense, who's got head coaching experience. Kotelnicki has been phenomenal with Kansas in his latest stop that we've seen. But I wonder about that transition period also in a hostile environment and knowing now they have time to practice this and offense coordinators, again, play to their strengths. We've always seen that offense with a mobile quarterback. Aller's not that guy. And Penn State, I need to see something from the wide receiver position. It hasn't been a factor. I think that hurt Aller last year in his development. So I expect a better season from their wide receivers this year. But I'm going to take those points at home with West Virginia. No one. I don't even think Neil. I mean, he was mad about them getting picked last year in the Big 12. To come out and win 9 games was an awesome season. It is a funky run system they got with a quarterback threat with Green, the 2 running backs. Whether you want to call them Thunder and Lightning, whatever, but those are 2 guys that could get it. But what West Virginia has done on the line and even getting guys plucked off their roster has been really impressive. So I believe if West Virginia scores first, watch out in this game. But I'll take West Virginia to in the end, I see Penn State winning, but I'll take the 8 points with West Virginia.
I don't think Neil Brown's on the hot seat, by the way. That's just he went 9-4 last year, and I feel like that there was a new deal. Now it wasn't like some blockbuster new deal that they'd owe him $26.7 million like Florida would owe Billy Napier on December 1st, but I do feel like he settled the ship there a little bit. everybody, if you have one bad season now in college football, you're on the hot seat the next
Yeah.
year. This is just the financial realities we're in. So I also just feel like this is a very good West Virginia football team. And I
Mhm.
like that Neil Brown went to media day 2 years ago and said we shouldn't be last and had a little piss and vinegar in him. That's good, right? Like we
Yeah.
don't need all these one game at a time robots. And I like that he went on your show and called out that horrible ESPN list that, didn't have Garrett Green on there and didn't have his tackle, is it Wyatt Millum,
Yeah. Yep.
on there. That's good, man. That's good. The sport is built on emotion and debate. So I feel like this again. We know it's going to be the highest scoring opening weekend in college football because I looked again and thought the under immediately on this game. Penn State is not going to go there and throw 9 go routes to Julian Fleming, right? There's no part of James Franklin that's going to do that. And West Virginia is going to kill the game with the run. Like running the quarterback is the great equalizer in college football. We can have NIL, we can have AI, we can have anything like that. If you can run the quarterback and grind the clock out and do first downs, you can shorten and win the game. And Georgia Tech, that was like a fresco that should be hung on the wall for that. The game in Ireland on that. So I feel like Garrett Green is a great dual threat quarterback. I think Jaheim White, the tailback, is one of the most underrated players in all college football. He averaged 7.7 yards per carry last year. I think they are going to say, all right, look, Penn State's got a good front seven, and they've had one of the great defenses in college football really consistently the last few years. I think Tom Allen will continue that. I agree with Steve. He was a great hire. But I think the Mountaineers are going to run, run, run. And if they get a little momentum and that crowd gets behind them, I think they will cover. I don't think they're going to win. But I think this is a low-scoring game with a ton of emotion, and it's going to put some of those new pieces that West Virginia has to the test immediately. And my only real thought on this that I'm convicted about is please, God, don't stop playing these games. Don't
Yeah.
stop playing these games. Like
Yep.
we can't become the homogenized AFC East. We can't. Like that's just not good for college football. This game is good for college football. There's a cushion for Penn State to potentially lose this game and still get to the playoff. But please, athletic directors, we can't stop pulling these games off the table.
No, you got to give the people something there to be interested in. And if you don't think that, where we're going next, Western Kentucky to Alabama. I've been in a couple of Alabama games where it was their annual mid-November homecoming game, whatever, and people weren't showing up because the game sucked. So you think it doesn't matter. You think they're just going to show up regardless. They aren't. They want to come to good games. And so props to West Virginia for booking both Penn State and Pitt in the first month of the season. And yeah, you're right. He's not on the hot seat, but I think he used those words. And maybe I just was thinking about my Twitter feed after we had Neil Brown on Marty McGee, because the West Virginia people believe if he loses this game, he'll be back on the hot seat. All right. I mentioned Alabama, Western Kentucky, the Hilltoppers heading down to Tuscaloosa. That's 7:00 Eastern on ESPN. The line, as I have it currently, Alabama favored by 31.5. The over-under sitting just under 60 at 59.5. Listen, Western Kentucky is not a bad football team. Alabama is in transition, as we all know. Steve, you mentioned the fact that it felt like half the roster transferred out of there. I don't think anybody's going to take Western Kentucky to win the game. But how do you feel about these numbers I just threw out there?
I'm really interested in this, just the nuance of new. I mean, You talk about Alabama not being fired up. They better be fired up because they need everybody involved in this season. The head coaching staff, the fan base to get out. I mean, this is unprecedented times where you're replacing the best coach of all time. And I think this is a great deal here for Alabama. You get a night game. You get a team in TJ Finley, third time he's played Alabama, I believe. Once at LSU, once at Auburn. And it could have been fourth, and I think he missed an Iron Bowl because of an injury when he was at Auburn. But reading a bunch of this stuff, Western Kentucky, I believe, led the country in blitzes last year. And I'm just super fired up for Jalen Milroe with Kalen DeBoer. And just knowing what Kalen has done with quarterbacks in the past, will he learn? What is he going to be better at? And I feel like this is a great warm-up for you. Everyone talks about what they lost in the receiver room. I'm fired up to see the pieces. Not many people knew the names of Roma Dunze and Polk and those guys a couple years ago, and look what Kalen DeBoer did with that. So I think the world of him as an offensive mind. I still believe there's enough talent on the defensive side. Alabama's always had those guys up front, along with Georgia too, where now we don't know those names on a first-name basis. We're talking about those D tackles and rush ends, and you talk about the rush ends Alabama's lost the last couple of years in Dallas Turner and Will Anderson. So I'm really fired up to see this new Alabama against a familiar face in TJ Finley, which is just the wildest thing. But I would take the 31.5, knowing what Alabama has ahead with a big road trip to Wisconsin in a couple weeks. Western Kentucky's always been known to score a couple points. I am interested to see with this new Bama, the phase with Coach Saban with these games was blow them out early and run the clock in the second half. It's a matter of how much you give up in the first half when you're getting 31.5 in those instances. So just because of the newness, I don't love it at all, but I'll take Western Kentucky plus the 31.5.
I love the over in this game.
Yep.
Like, the one thing I can guarantee you is this will not be a 14 possession game that rips off in a clean 320, like the new Major League Baseball with the pitch clock. You got two dudes who like to chuck it. My favorite Western Kentucky fact from the offseason, I was talking to someone on their staff, and it was June. Now, all college coaches hate June right now. It's the busiest month. They have all the visits and everything like that. You know how many high school kids visited Western Kentucky officially in June?
Wow.
0.
Whoa.
They're just like, we're taking dudes from the portal.
Yeah.
We're taking dudes from the portal. Let's just not run a roost like we want a high school recruit. We are going to take guys from the portal. And that's why they got guys like TJ Finley playing a quarterback. They have just gone whole hog into the portal, and this is where we're going to get dudes from. And they've had dudes. They've had dudes drafted at receiver recently. They've had. I give Tyson Helm credit. Like, he is convicted. He does not have one foot on each side of the road and pretending. He knows exactly how he wants to acquire talent. He is doing it that way. They have good players. They will score points. I think Alabama covers. Now, Kalen's going to throw the ball around a little bit, right? Like that it is not in his DNA to like run the clock in the game. So I think Alabama does end up covering. I think the over gets smashed. And I think congrats to our new colleague, Nick Saban. We'll have the field named after him, I believe, right? On Saturday night. So
yeah. And honestly, I wish this game was not at night. I wish this game was at noon Eastern, just so that you guys could watch him have his first quarter of football that he's not on the field for since 1970. Right. And what kind of duck on the pond is he going to be watching the game when, you see him from the chest up, sitting in the press box, it's going to be great. But if you could see his feet, it's going to be the strangest thing for him. I just can't even imagine.
I'll say this. Steve and I were at Georgia Tech practice in Dublin. I believe it was Thursday, Steve, right? Mm-hmm. I went Thursday and Friday, and Nick actually went both days. And, Steve is a more intent football watcher than me. I'm there chatting up the GM for some information, kind of working the sources. Steve's looking at the tight ends and how they get out of breaks. Nick Saban looked like he was going to run out of the tunnel on Saturday when he was. I was like, oh, no small talk for him. He was airlocked into that walkthrough. Had a long conversation with Brent Key, and Key told me later that on the plane on the way over, Nick flew with Georgia Tech. He was watching. Hey, run that back with the with the film. So it will be. It's a great point. It will be interesting how, he spends his first Saturday, obviously he was in the NFL, but, his first weekend day without a direct tie to football in a very, very long time. But that fire was burning in those eyes when he was watching that tech practice on Thursday.
Yeah, it was like when he showed up for SEC Media Days, and we're sitting in show meetings, and he's talking for SEC Network, and he's talking about number 87 for Kentucky and number 44. And we're like, Coach, how do you know all this? And he's like, well, I watch the spring games. Well, which ones? All of them.
All of them.
Yeah. And it's just, that's why he's the GOAT. And
can't tell you how many coaches have been like, just talked to Nick Saban today. It was supposed to be 30 minutes, went an hour.
Went an hour. Yeah. Talking ball. And by the way, big deal. We're going to have Big Red from Western Kentucky and Big Al in the same place at the same time. That's two.
Yeah.
I think super underrated mascots throughout
Big Red
college
is
football.
my favorite mascot. Now, Big Red's the nickname of our coordinating producer, Matt Garrett, which is
Yes,
why I said
yes,
that. This has
absolutely.
my affinity for Big Red predates knowing the actual person Big Red. I love the Western Kentucky mascot. I think it's the best mascot in college sports.
Yeah, like the Stanford tree. Never quite sure what shape it's going to be
Yeah, a
in
little
for the Big
disheveled.
Red. Yeah, a little disheveled, but whatever.
It
That's
happens.
that's how we roll. All right. Uh, Talking about the defending national champions making the playoff, the position that Alabama was in time and time and time again. Fresno State will travel to the Big House. That's 7 o'clock Eastern on Saturday night. And then right now, Michigan favored by 21 at home, over under at 45.5. This, of course, will be the first game not coached by Jim Harbaugh, at least not tied to a suspension
Yeah.
in the Big House in a long time. This will also be the first time that anyone will watch Michigan play after they watch the Connor Stallions documentary. And oh, by the way, listen, we're talking about teams that are good and can move the football. Fresno State is one of those teams, and that
Yeah.
they can move the football. They won 9 games last year. Mikey Keene is the truth. That guy can play,
He can
and
scoop.
he can scoop at quarterback. And so, Steve, I'll start with you. Where are you on a game that has a 21-point line for Michigan at home, which to some people might not sound like enough?
Yeah, I will say in my getting ready and recapping the week, this will be the first game I download to watch the All-22 because I'm just dying to see what Michigan looks like. We talk about all this new. We did it with Alabama, all these other teams that have new head coaches, and this is two teams. I thought a lot of Fresno State. Obviously, Tedford had to step back, so they got a new head coach. But I like Fresno State's personnel. But I have no idea if Michigan, no, I should say if people realize what J.J. McCarthy meant to that offense, and when you talk to Nick Saban, when he last week we were just talking about what Michigan has to replace, and he talks about what J.J. did on third downs. And then you go back to the big spots against him with a couple throws in the Rose Bowl. And then, in the national championship with a monster scramble when that game was, teetering where you didn't know which way it was going to go. A lot of pressure on Mr. Orji at quarterback. So I'm dying to see what Michigan looks like coming out of the blocks offensively. I believe Fresno State has the goods to keep this within 21. So I will take the road team that's never afraid to go anywhere and play. And I'll take the 21 points with Fresno State. I'm the gamblers out there, you guys, this would be good to get your take also. But like this is a 34-13 game projected by the numbers when you look at a point spread and the over/under total. I'll be shocked if Michigan scores. If Michigan scores 30 plus in this game, look out. Look out right now, especially you people in Austin, because you're going to be walking into a buzzsaw next week. So that's what when you start thinking about numbers like that, Fresno State, their team totals around 13 points, I would say. Are they going to score 2 touchdowns? I don't know, but can they get some drives together and kick some field goals while it's still early? That's to be seen. So I'm locked into this as soon as it ends, knowing I'll be on the sidelines in College Station. But I'll take Fresno State plus the 21.
I don't think there's a bigger dichotomy of known and unknown than Michigan entering this season. The known is the defense. Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham are the best defensive tackle pairing in the country, and I don't really think it's close in terms of interior defensive linemen. The guy who's been the buzz of camp there is Jayshon Barham. He's a Maryland transfer. He's a linebacker. They're going to use him off the edge a little bit. They really feel like he's going to be a breakthrough player who could end up being like a top 50 draft pick. He has been on a very good defense. He's been the buzziest guy in camp. Obviously, they have Will Johnson at corner, who's the best corner in the country. Maybe Ben Morrison's in that conversation, but right now I think you take him, CB1 going into this season. And then, and the reason Steve wants to download the All-22s is there's a lot of unknowns on the offense, and we assume Alex Orji is going to be the starter. That's where all signs and reps indicate. Do they become like a bit of a QB run team as he develops into a passer? He's taken one pass. Like, I think that identity shift is interesting there. I can't talk myself into any kind of Fresno upset bid, keeping it close, because I just don't think they're going to be able to move the ball. Mikey Keene will have to rush for 150 plus yards if they're going to have a bid here, and they're going to have to take what we can call the the key game plan from Georgia Tech over the weekend and really drain the clock. But I just can't see on a hot noon Midwestern day them slugging it out in the trenches enough to grind and move the ball. So I will take Michigan, and plenty of curiosities, but I really feel like they'll end up controlling this thing and winning it soundly.
Yeah, and we mentioned Saban will be at Alabama, the still new head coach of the not San Diego Chargers, expected to be in the building in Michigan.
So he actually reneged on that, Ryan.
Yeah, oh, good. Yeah, I've been at the beach, and I'm relieved to hear that. We're going to talk. We talked about the Connor Stallions documentary on Wednesday, and I'm glad Harbaugh decided not to do it because there's been enough thumbing of the nose. Yeah. And that won't bode well in any investigation. All right. Let's take it on up to the world's largest Roomba, Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas. There with Stanford Steve's people. Sunday night, not Saturday night, Sunday night, 7:30 Eastern on ABC. Right now, your LSU Tigers are favored by 4.5 points over the Trojans of Southern California, now a Big Ten powerhouse. And the over-under on that is 64.5. And guys, this is a fascinating game because, Brian Kelly received criticism, rightfully so, about not being able to stop anyone last year. They have shored up that defense. They have Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback, which is great, but you're still losing the Heisman Trophy winner behind center. There's going to be a step backwards. There's no question about that. And meanwhile, I have no idea what the hell is going on at USC. And I don't know that a lot of people do. And it's time to figure out what is going on. And so to me, it feels like go Tigers there in the large Roomba. I'll start with you, Pete. Where are you with this?
I'm go Tigers here. USC has to prove they can stop someone. And look, LSU wasn't exactly a juggernaut. The number in this, the over under is pretty big, right? Is it 60 or right around 60?
64.5.
Yeah, 64.5.
Yeah, that's a big number, and that is a direct insult to the defensive performances of each unit the last year. I don't know how much conviction I have behind LSU's defensive personnel, but I do feel like Brian Kelly's going to slow and control this game a little bit. Like he's not going to get in a shootout with Lincoln Riley in Vegas. That just doesn't seem like that's good coaching. So I think LSU figures out a way to win. They also lost 2 first-round receivers, but Saban said on game day the other day, you can shake a tree in Louisiana and find a first-round pick at receiver. So, but this is my conviction on LSU is the offensive line. They have a top 5 offensive line in college football. They probably have they in Oregon maybe have the best tackle pairing in college football. And I think that is their game plan is to pound and pave away and be like, all right, USC, you have this big revamped defense and, fancy cross down higher, line up and stop us.
Yeah, I've hemmed and hawed going back and forth about this game because of the lack of respect being shown towards USC. It's funny. LSU and Mizzou are these teams that, not sleeper teams because, they have plenty of namesake, but I wonder about the defensive situations on those two teams. Are those two head coaches just going to say, you know what, we'll figure out the defense as we go. We're going to score. And Missouri loses their DC to LSU, and on top of that, loses a bunch of NFL guys. And now I think about LSU, where kind of have the same personnel, but they weren't good. And now you bring in a coordinator. How much can he fix? And Lincoln Riley's going to score on almost anybody they play. I do believe in P. I keep going back and forth with this offensive line stuff, whether it's Georgia, Texas, LSU. I think those are the 3 tops. Alabama could be there by the end of the season, knowing what Proctor plays himself into. So will Brian Kelly be stubborn enough? I think this is a big spot when you talk about Brian Kelly, right? Year 3 at all these places, MAC championship, Central Michigan, undefeated regular season, BCS bowl game in Cincinnati, undefeated season, national championship game with Notre Dame. And now you're in your 3rd year at LSU, but I look at what they've looked like the last 2 years in openers. It's been ugly. You talk about having Jaden Daniels and, threw for 300, but the game was out of hand last year. They couldn't stop Florida State. The year before, they couldn't field a punt, return a punt. They couldn't get an extra point off.
Booty quit in that game, remember?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I just look
Quick's an
at
exaggeration, but wasn't exactly on this hustle bus. Yeah.
no, not at all. So I look at LSU having to have a lot of questions answered, whereas USC is coming under the radar a little bit. You know they're going to score. They're only going to be better defensively, but over the course of 60 minutes, how much can they hold up against that offensive line of LSU? I got LSU by a field goal, which means I'm taking USC plus the 4.5.
Well, it's going to be interesting, and it is still crazy for my brain to believe that they'll be playing college football right there on the Strip, and not just no. Hey, and that's no slight to my boy Barry Odom, UNLV, who are really good now, but it's just weird to see that big game out there. So, boys, this has been entertaining, and I'll say I've never been on the pick show, and I will preface this also by saying that, like Stanford Steve suddenly missing refrigerator, y'all probably should just not listen to my picks and just listen to these other two guys, because I got a lot of NASCAR drivers won't speak to me, because back when I was at the racetrack, hey Ryan, who should I do? So, do so and so. And Elliot Sadler once told me, he said, "Son, you're gonna put me in the poll house with these picks." So I'm just putting that out there as I make my pick show debut. But it's been fun, boys. Y'all have a good time. Grab you some air conditioning and enjoy College Station. And I'll wave at you from Gainesville.
Go to Satchels.
Oh yeah, don't worry. I'll absolutely be there. Tell Coach Saban I said to hang in there. He'll be all right. Thanks for listening to the College Game Day podcast, the Picks edition. Please download the podcast wherever you prefer to get your podcast, or better yet, subscribe so you'll never miss a single episode. Have a great week 1.